Whenever this thing's ready. Okay, I think we're
Whenever. All right.
well.
Hey, Barry.
Hey, Merle, how you doing?
I'm doing
Hey,
fantastic.
everyone, welcome to Over 50 Starting Over. I'm Barry Edwards,
And I'm Merle Garrison.
and it is March 12th, I do believe. Is it 12th or 13th?
It is the
12th.
12th. You got it.
And we are just watching a coronavirus scare unravel right before our eyes in all the last 24 hours. I am sure that that's going to dominate most of our conversation on the show. We always do start off with the O5O, the over 50 starting over segment, which is really directed at people trying to improve their careers, start new ones, and find their careers of passion. We then segue somewhat find a segue into metaphysical, religious kind of a topic, and that takes us to current events, politics, and that kind of thing towards the end. And with the coronavirus, what it makes me think about with the O5O thing is we all of a sudden seem like we are going to be heading straight into a deeper recession as a result of this. And with that comes a lot of fears, layoffs. We've seen this before way too recently. The layoffs that come with small, mid-sized, but even large businesses that trying to trim the fat. That puts a lot of people back out into the workforce, into the so-called gig economy, if you will. But a lot of us have been out here for quite some time already. And so there's the fear of what happens, how do we make ends meet, and how do you get your piece of the pie? And the truth of the matter is there's an awful lot of opportunity that comes with this. And if you realize that, then you can know how to better position yourself for it. And what I mean by that is when companies want to trim the fat, there is an opportunity to use simple numbers of if they're going to cut a $100,000 a year marketing manager, well, then it can make very good sense for them to outsource that resource to someone like me or someone else out there for $50,000 a year or $30,000 a year and save money on their benefits. So there's a lot of opportunity out there if you position yourself for that. And I just want to give a shout out to, this is changing gears just a little bit, but this has been a neat thing that's been on my mind the last few days is on Friday, I had a terrific meeting with one of my clients, or a law firm. I guess I could go ahead and divulge Walliger and Walliger downtown, and it's a smaller family-owned law firm. I just love these people, and they commissioned me to do a brand enhancement for them and redo their website, increase their search engine optimization, and ultimately to get that form filled out with a new potential prospect, a new conversion, and that kind of thing. And so the most important part of doing any of this is to position their services as best as possible. So it's search engine optimized and that it puts the firm in the best light. When this is done properly, all the rest of their marketing, their future marketing efforts, videos that we do, social media postings that we do, content marketing plans will all be filled with this kind of like verbiage because I just had the best time. I shout out to Brendan Kelly, who's a lawyer there, who's in charge of their marketing. He and I work together in unison on this. We met on Friday afternoon, and I have a specific outline, a framework of the way I approach creating content for websites. I specialize in lead generating websites, and that's easier said than done. You have to pull every trick in the book out, find trust and credibility factors, and mostly find their most unique value propositions in order to get that response. So that's what we're working on Friday. And it's taxing, let me tell you. And we were there, everybody else is gone. We were there at 6:30 and hammered through all 5 of the services. But we were rolling, man. I mean, you know, when you got a relationship with a client like that, you can do such amazing work because he's got the industry knowledge and the verbiage, right? For sure. And I had the technique. If he's to do it on his own, oh, that's the worst. You get overwhelmed. A person will start one service in one way, go to another service and try to write about it in a complete another way. None of them will match up or make sense. And it's just completely overwhelming for that person. But if I come in there and he starts throwing out certain amounts of information with too much industry speak, I could call him on that in a minute. Like, hey, Brendan, this has to speak to me, okay, not fellow lawyers, because I'm a potential client for you. And so we just really, we had a good vibe going and hammered right through that. But I just wanted to give an update on that because I preach a lot to people about finding their best value propositions, which is extremely hard to do on your own. I have a small class where I walk people through that. If you have any interest in that, just email me, mail at over50startingover.com. At any time, guys, if you're wondering anything about the show, how to get to it on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, whatever, YouTube, just go to over50startingover.com. Everything is right there in front of your face. But also leave us comments and feedback. Back to what I was saying. So your value proposition is your most unique way of approaching your particular service and something that can't be easily duplicated by someone else. It's very hard to get to on your own, but I do some tips and tricks with people to drag it out of them. And as I always tell my clients when I'm working with them on this, is I need to get you in a place where it's like we're out having a beer. We're a couple buddies. We're on our 3rd beer, and I'm asking you why you got into this particular thing. And that's when you start telling me the truth. After I get through your buzzwords and everything that you think you're supposed to be telling me, and now you're telling me from your heart, all I got to do is extract all those swear words out of there, and I got the copy right there, man. It's right from the heart. It's the good stuff. So that's the process I go through with my clients. And so those of you that are out there over 50, starting over, trying to pull that copy together on your own, like I said, I do have some worksheets for you that help in that regard, but also knowing what I just told you, it helps to talk about this at least with another friend that understands you and possibly your business just a little bit.
You know, Barry, it sounded to me like the way you started out that you were relating what you do as far as a person that could be outsourced by another company with really the situation and the environment that's going on today, where it actually offers up more opportunity in that way. Can you speak a little bit more to that?
Well, you're absolutely right. This has been called for at least the last 5 to 10 years, the gig economy. And
what does that mean? Gig
no, that
economy?
means people like us, like me, you go out on your own and you're a consultant now, and you're always looking for your next gig. That's the hard.
I got it.
Let me tell you, after 30 years, that gets very tiring. So it's very important to find a way to market yourself where you don't have to be out pounding the pavement all the time. Which is just exhausting. But even like this podcast, it gets me out in front of the right kind of people. So it creates awareness. And then regular social media postings will also keep you out in front of people's eyeballs. But to your point is, with this coronavirus causing such a disruption in the marketplace once again, it is increasing this whole gig economy. And I'm just trying to soothe some fears and anxiety and try to tell people that if you see it in the right light, that there's a lot of opportunity that comes with this. So you have to seize that. Now, additionally, what I think that this is doing in a positive light is with corporate America, standard corporate. I think that everyday businesses and even colleges as well have been really lagging behind with what technology provides us. And what I mean by that is remote working. So, like me, I can work remotely with anybody anywhere in the world. We have Skype now. We have Slack. We're on Skype right now. And I think there's absolutely something to be said for meeting with somebody via a camera. But it's okay, so that you're looking into somebody's eyes, you're reading their expressions and that kind of thing. That's just as well as sitting right across the table from them in the same room, in my opinion. I think it works quite well. And I see people like my girlfriend Lisa, who is a very, very hard worker, a very effective worker when she's not being bothered all the time, constantly with meetings. And that's what happens to her at work when she works remotely from home. She's at least 4 times more productive because she's not being interrupted. I will admit, a lot of people, I don't know the percentage, maybe 60% of people don't do well working on their own because they don't have the self-discipline and get easily distracted. I don't know, Merle, if you had to take a stab at that, what would
Well,
you think?
I think we're going to see how that really works, because I think more and more companies right now are being forced into the position where they're going to have to experiment with the remote employees. I was just talking to my neighbor just last night who works for a studio down in Hollywood, and that studio is owned by Viacom, and they're based out of New York. 2 of their employees tested positive for coronavirus. And as a result, tomorrow, they're actually going to test the remote operatives of their system, and they're going to have all of their employees actually working out of their homes. So it's a matter now of it's going to have to work.
Yeah,
And what we're going to see is we're going to see a paradigm shift in how America runs their business. And I really
agreed.
believe that there are people that are on the forefront that have been doing this type of thing for a long time that are going to be able to benefit from this. I mean, look, a lot of people like myself have been working remote, just like you, for years and years and years, and those people are going to have an advantage. And in fact, if you really want to start to look at things, you can look at it as the glass is either half full or half empty. And I think for the people that are looking at things as the glass is half full, are going to have tremendous advantage here. You know,
Agreed.
it's like a law of the law of gravity, or anything in physics, that if you have in your heart, or you've trained your mind in your heart to expect good, then good's actually going to happen. It's like a magnet, it draws it to you. You know,
Yeah.
there's opportunity right now for consultants or people that have experience doing this type of remote work to be a consultant for companies out there, large companies out there that are just now experimenting with it. How do you make yourself the most efficient at home? How do you maximize your hours at home? And at the same time, there's a flip side to that, is how do you make sure that you don't overwork yourself at home? One of the things
Mm,
that I've learned working at home is that you can actually lose track of time, and before you know it, it's midnight and you've worked a 14-hour day. That's a
mm.
way you can burn out as well. So I think there's some very positive things that we can look at, but again, we're being forced to look at this, and it's going to have to work. I think the good news is this: we live in a country that is used to dealing with adversity. And as they say, with every adversity is the seed of opportunity. I know in
Mhm.
my own life that every adverse situation I've ever run into, I have relied on the Lord, and every single time it's put me into a higher place. I see that happening with the coronavirus right now. But the killer is the fear factor.
Yeah.
And I think that what we're running into right now is that there is a lot of fear out there. It's being pumped through our social media, it's on our news. People are talking, family members are arguing, and I think that this is not a time to be focusing on fear or the fear factor. I think this is a time where we need to really be focusing on unity. And America, the American spirit, is one where one of brotherhood, where we actually lift each other up, and we, just like this show, where we want to inject positive into a situation
Mm.
that looks dark. And here's another thing too, is that if you were holding a light in your hand and it was broad daylight, that light would probably hardly be noticeable. But if you're holding a light and suddenly it becomes pitch black, boy, everyone's going to be able to see
Mm.
that light.
Mm.
It's times like this where if you are light, people will be drawn to that light like a magnet. And I think for people that are in the situation of over 50 starting over, be light right now. That's critical to your success going forward. Here's another thing to think about too, is that as we take a look at the situation right now, the seeds of opportunity are out there. An article I was reading recently had to do with telehealth, and I think what we're looking at is that everybody pretty much has an iPad or an iPhone, and the telehealth industry has been in its infancy for some time now. But I think this is an opportunity for that type of apparatus, that type of business, that type of care can really take off. And
Oh, yeah.
if you have the resource and the means, investing in something like that is probably a good idea right now. Millionaires can be made overnight with ideas like this, Barry. What are your thoughts?
I think all of your advice was absolutely excellent, especially about the part about finding the opportunity and keeping a positive attitude, because you're right. Right now in the media, they are just pumping out fear right now. And some of it is just cautionary, of course. I think that, okay, time will tell if we're being overly overreacting or if we're acting appropriately. I tend to think that these are very appropriate, drastic measures that will get everything under control. And in the end, I think it's going to be like the West Nile virus or all the other things is like, oh boy, we once again were told that it was end of times, and it really didn't turn out to be all that much as what we feared. But what bothers me is like I was driving around earlier today and I try to flip over to NPR when I can for as long as I could take it. And what do? Immediately they find some scientist who his whole story is about how Trump has been dropping the ball and not reacting fast enough. And it's like, how the hell they find this guy? Because it had to be, harder to find this guy than somebody that says, oh, appropriate steps are being, because we're taking very drastic measures. And it's been very quickly. And I mean, like I said, time will tell how it all goes, but it is. You mentioned that this is a time when it should be more about unity and coming together. But when I see NPR, who's been dropping the ball for 4 years straight now, try to magnify a story like this and make it divisive about this coronavirus and make it political. Hey, that was China who dropped the ball on this, okay? Not us. I think we're doing a very good job of picking up the pieces at this point. And well, and also everybody, the entire world will rely on us for the vaccine as well. So let's just keep our crap together and move forward, keep it positive, do the right things, wash your hands a lot. Now, this leads me to all kinds of stuff about Okay, first of all, if you're healthy, you're not over 60 with some kind of a lung problem, all of that, you might be saying, well, I'm not that target. I'm not going to die. No, but you can be a carrier. Okay, and you can spread the infection. So it is our duty to wash our hands constantly, use hand sanitizer. I went to the gym every morning this week, and it's a little bit funny. I remember on Tuesday I was talking to my buddy there, and I'm like, well, it could very well be that they end up closing down the gyms because of this. By this morning, 2 days later, I'm like, this may be the last time I see you here for a while, because Governor DeWine here just banned gatherings of over 40 people.
Wow.
The NBA just canceled their season, as I understand.
Yes, they did. The
The
NHL.
is
They
that
followed
right?
suit. Yep.
In Cleveland, the Department of Justice just closed down today, which means City Hall is going to be right behind it. Dude, that's huge. That's huge. So there's very drastic measures being taken. And I got a guy coming here from Spectrum cable guys coming after the podcast. And tell you what, as soon as he enters the door, he's getting hand sanitizer. All right. Hey, I'm not laughing. I'm
I
serious.
think that's a very wise thing to do, Barry. I think it's extremely wise.
Yeah. And as I was going to make the point, when I'm at the gym, I go to Planet Fitness, which is really the cleanest gym I've ever belonged to. They have the sanitation bottles and towels everywhere, paper towels. And so everybody wipes down all their stuff all the time. And they have the hand sanitizer everywhere. So I am now using that between like every third set. And of course, wiping down everything very, very well. So I'm not really concerned about it. In these regards, if you take these kind of proper precautions, we should all be just fine. But it is about taking it very seriously. And as I said, even if you're not in the demographic, know that you're a carrier and you can carry this to your loved ones that who may be susceptible. So wash your hands for sure.
Yeah, I think the washing your hands is really important. Yesterday, I heard some noises outside, so I went out to check it out, and it was my neighbor, and he came over to me. He's a really good guy, and he went to shake my hand, and I said, "Oh, hold on a second. I think we better elbow bump here." And he kind of looked at me like I was crazy, and I said, "Hey, man, you got to do what you got to do right now." And I think those things are really important right now, and we should probably, even though they feel uncomfortable, I think there's again a paradigm shift that we need to pay attention to, and we just need to. I think you said we all need to do our part right now. You brought up the president and, his response to this whole thing. And while we all know that we don't have a perfect president, we never will, by the way, because people are people. But I do think, and I didn't actually see his address yesterday, but I do think that from what I've heard, some of the things that he said were very prudent, and he emphasized best practices for personal hygiene, just like you're saying, and he mentioned social distancing, the elbow bump. I'm not so sure exactly how safe that is, but at least you're not getting anything on your hands and passing things along that way. He didn't sugarcoat the threat to the elderly. We talked about that.
Sure.
Urging them to avoid crowds. We talked about that as well. And he also touted an agreement with the health insurance industry to eliminate co-pays for treatment and to prevent surprise billing. So it seems to me that at this point, we are seeing a backlash towards our president and very partisan politics that are still happening. They've been happening all along. We saw that AOC is out there saying that she's noticing that the population is avoiding Asian restaurants or Chinese restaurants.
Oh, you gotta be kidding me.
She's calling that racist. That is
that's
her
a new
words.
low. New low.
CNN's Jim Acosta claims Trump calling the virus foreign smacks of xenophobia. And at the same time, what we're seeing is that China is out there with a propaganda apparatus that is actually smearing the United States, saying that the United States is really to blame for this whole thing. Some very strange.
How?
Well, you'd have to talk to them. They've got a whole propaganda thing that's going on, and they're saying that, we are not handling this right. We're responsible for the spread of this whole thing, that it didn't actually start in Wuhan, and that we're blaming the Chinese for this. But you have to look at what we're up against here with the Chinese government. They are a communist government. They are filled with propaganda, and they can't afford for their own country to think that they started this in any sort of way or made any kinds of mistakes. In a totalitarian government, the head of the government can never admit fault. And so this is the type of thing that's happening, and they're trying to somehow protect their own integrity, I guess you could say. But I think it also tells us where we are with a country like that, and dealing with a country like that. You really can't trust them. And as we spoke about earlier in our broadcasts about China and how over the last decade or so, we've outsourced many, many manufacturing jobs over to China. I think, again, this whole paradigm shift smacks of the fact that we need to be bringing manufacturing back home, especially with our drug industry and our manufacturing of drug industry. Remember, Wuhan, China is where a lot of drugs are being tested and produced. And this has a dramatic effect on how we respond to this. On a positive note, though, because I don't want to be all doom and gloom here, we've got several companies here with the drug companies within the United States and actually across the world that are working on the vaccination for this particular strain, and they are all saying very positive things and feeling as though they're on the doorstep of finding a vaccination for this. I just want to say this, that in a country like the United States, in the free market where there's competition, it inspires ingenuity and efficiency. And we have seen this type of thing before in our history. This is not, I actually would say that what we're looking at here is very much like a war. In a war, we've all got to be on the same page. We've got our businesses have got to be able to share information with each other. There's got to be, what we've seen in World War II, for example, was that FDR started to eliminate a lot of the antitrust laws, or put a suspension on a lot of the antitrust laws, and allow companies to share information with each other so that they could speed solutions to the market that were desperately needed in order to win the war. And I really believe that as we take a look at the, pardon me, the Food and Drug Administration, one of the obstacles to getting these vaccinations out into the market is the heavy testing and a lot of the financial burdens that are on these companies in order to get a drug to the market. I really believe that the president has to be given power to circumvent some of those items to be able to rush this into the market and do testing in this and get this out there. We saw that again during World War II when our troops were in New Guinea and they were all getting malaria, where the president actually removed a lot of those obstacles, and we were able to come up with an antivirus to malaria. They were also able to test DDT and very quickly introduce that, which really saved countless lives during the war. And throughout the entire world, millions of lives were saved by that. What I'm saying here is that we live in a country where the best opportunity to be able to overcome this is actually right here. And I've got a lot of hope for what we are about to see here. I think that, again, the seeds of opportunity are right here in front of us. I think right now, the thing that we need to do, rather than criticize the president, or for instance, I just saw Joe Biden on the on the news just before I came out here, and just chastising the Trump administration
Sure.
for how they're handling the coronavirus. I really believe that that's not in the best interest of the country. I really believe that what we all should be doing right now is praying for the president, because the president is really the leader of this nation. And he's not just the Republican president or the conservative president, he's the president of the United States. Not only that, but this is the most powerful country in the world. And really, when you take a look at this, in reality, that position, no matter who's in that position, is the most powerful person in the world. And what we've seen throughout history is that the most powerful person in the world has a lot to do with the well-being of the world. I really believe that what's needed right now is a national day of prayer. And I see this whole coronavirus as more of a, yes, it is a sort of a plague that's happened. The World Health Organization has declared it a pandemic. And we've seen these types of things before in history. And the National Day of Prayer, I think, is something that should happen here. And it should come from the highest office in the world, which is the president. Indulge me here for just a second, Barry, because I think I have some important things I want to point out. And coming from the Bible, what we saw was in the book of Samuel is that David, who was the greatest king of Israel, and also the time where Israel was the most powerful country in the world at the time, was facing a plague, and the plague had already killed 70,000 people. David interceded, and when he interceded for the people, God himself was able to stop the plague in its tracks. Interestingly, David was instructed by the Lord to put up a memorial to God in a particular place, and that particular place is where the temple was eventually built by his son Solomon. And there is a passage in the Bible when the temple was dedicated that I think really speaks to this whole thing. And it says this, that if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I, the Lord, will hear from them from heaven and will forgive their sin and heal their land. And we've seen where this has happened several times throughout history. In the Bible in particular, the Israeli government, the people after Solomon, the kings of Solomon, and around 500 BC, they were destroyed. And it's because they had completely turned away from God. Sound familiar? And they were taken away by a king called Nebuchadnezzar into Babylon. And about 70 years later, a man by the name of Daniel remembered this whole prayer that Solomon had said. Now, the power of one man praying is really amazing. Daniel was really seen as the leader of the country by God, and God recognized Daniel's prayer. And what happened very quickly was Israel became a nation again after 70 years of captivity within Babylon. We have our own history here where during very, very trying times, our own presidents have actually called for a national prayer, and amazing things have happened. George Washington called for a national prayer during the Revolutionary War. And as you know, we were fighting the most powerful military in history for something like 500 years. The British had dominated the world. And here our ragtag army, the Continental Army, was able to turn the tide on the British after getting their butts kicked for years, was able to turn the tide on the British and become a nation. Not only that, but during the Civil War, Abraham Lincoln did the same thing when we were really facing the most dire consequences if that war were to be lost. Slavery was at stake and our nation was at stake. Even Franklin Delano Roosevelt prayed right before D-Day, as D-Day was happening, and he said these words in prayer during the National Day of Prayer. He led the prayer, and some of the words he said were, "Almighty God, our sons, pride of our nation, this day have set upon a mighty endeavor. Lead them straight and true. Give strength to their arms, stoutness to their hearts, steadfastness to their faith." And as you know, within less than a year, the world was at peace. These are amazing things. And I really believe that prayer is the answer. And I really believe that the root of this coronavirus has everything to do with a spiritual attack, not just a virus attack that's happening here in our country. Case in point, why in the world would we run out of toilet paper across the United States? I mean, seriously, toilet paper?
This is a spiritual attack, toilet paper.
Yeah, I'm saying fear is what's driving this whole thing, not the toilet paper. The toilet paper is, why would everybody run out and get toilet paper in the face of the coronavirus? That seems extremely illogical to me. And there are other things as well. I'm just saying that what we need to turn. I think a big opportunity is that people can turn to God. We are his people. We are a nation that's founded under God. If you say the Pledge of Allegiance, it says one nation under God.
Yeah, that was added in the 50s.
Our First Amendment is freedom of religion. People, this country was founded on the fact that God exists and people are free to pray to God. And as a result, we've become the greatest nation that has ever been known to mankind. And I think that with God's help, especially with God's help, we can get through this.
Well, I agree. You know that I very much believe in the power of prayer, for sure. But I also strongly believe in the separation of church and state. And when those two things are merged, power gets corruption certainly happens. Tyranny even happens. And so I think our spiritual leaders, I think that we could use some stronger spiritual leaders in this country of whatever religion it may be. I definitely believe in the freedom of religion too. We are a more diverse country than we've ever been. And I think that we need to respect each other in that regard.
Absolutely.
Which is really why I very much believe in the separation of church and state. But that being said, I think that on an individual, and I also don't believe government. I think government should have as the least amount of effect on a personal being's life as possible. I'm very libertarian in that regard. Small government, leave us alone, and as long as you're not hurting anybody, do what you want, kind of thing. But all that being said, that comes back to personal responsibility and that kind of thing. So I do believe that on a personal level, if you want to get something done, don't rely on the government to tell you to have a national prayer day. Have a national prayer day. What we're doing right here is we want to organize people that want the same kind of inspiration that you and I are always looking for. So let's talk about these kinds of things that are really good for everybody. And prayer. Please pray for the comfort of our citizens and the finding of the vaccine for this in whatever way that works for you. Because I believe all of these, any type of prayer has a very valid and profound effect. That's my point to that. I just don't want the government getting involved with prayer. And
Well, the government's always been involved with prayer. And by the way, the separation of church and state is not in the Constitution. It's in a letter that Thomas Jefferson wrote to the Danbury Baptists that were saying that he was not going to stop them from praying. But almost every president leading up into our lives has prayed over the nation. That's never been a problem whatsoever. And also, it's led us through dire times in our history, just as I've pointed out, which has turned the tide on extreme threats to the nation. So I'm not saying that the president should force people to prayer, but the day of Thanksgiving is actually a day that was implemented by Lincoln and also made into a permanent national holiday, which actually is a national day of prayer. It's Thanksgiving to God. So the government's always been involved in this.
They have, and to varying degrees, and certainly always have since the beginning of civilization, and less so as we get more evolved, if you will. What do you, and I think it's necessary because of the diversity, the increasing diversity of the American melting pot. So it's just about respecting each other.
Yeah. And so I think that, again, our Bill of Rights respects the fact that people have different creeds and different religions. Certainly, I'm not suggesting that everybody should become a Christian, but this is a prayerful nation, and we should be able to come together in prayer. And who better to lead that than our president? That's the leader of the country. And if we look at how God works, that's how he works. Right now is a time for unity, not for disunity. And I really believe that the problems that we've ever seen in this country have everything to do with disunity. History proves it out time and time again. And what we're seeing right now is that if we were able to come together and get on the same page. For instance, there's a bill in Congress right now for the coronavirus and to put funding into different organizations from the government in order to speed this up. But these guys can't stop arguing about small details that are in the bill. Why not find common ground and have unity and push something forward so that the people can benefit? That seems to be the problem, is unity seems to be the problem here.
Politics are the problem. The worst possible scenario kind of is unfolding, and that is this coronavirus comes along in the election year. That's the problem. So it's now crushing the stock market, which has been soaring for 3 years. And so Democrats are already using every opportunity they can right now to blame Trump for the virus, as we talked about.
I think that's terrible.
Just wait till the economy, what they're going to say about the economy. So to your point, if there's anything that they can do to prolong the agony of this because of the election year, their hate for Trump outweighs the health of the American people, in my opinion.
I agree.
Yeah, so it's a tragedy that it's happening here on an election year. And, who knows how this may blow up in everyone's face, because it's playing with fire. I mean, to use this, such a profound natural event, to try to use this for political gain, I can't even imagine how the negative ramifications that can unfold.
Yeah, I can't disagree. And what we're seeing too in the government is there are certain government officials in Congress that have now had to self-quarantine themselves. Rick Scott being the latest one, Ted Cruz being another one. We're seeing where Congress is looking at going on a recess because of the concern of that, and then not allowing other people into Congress. There is really, look, this is proportionally, as we take a look at this, we are looking at 1,300 cases of coronavirus here in the United States. And if we take a look at that compared to the population, it's small right now. Sure. We've had 36 deaths here in the United States as well. but we do know what the potential is. The potential is gigantic, and I do believe that this is, as we heard from the guy that the lead doctor in charge of this, that this is going to get worse. There's no doubt that it is going to get worse. And my only suggestion earlier is that we need to involve sunlight, and light comes from each of us, and we need to be positive, and we need to be focusing on our faith as well and calling God into the situation, because what we really need is a miracle. As we take a look at the stock market and our finances, these things are all chain reactions to this whole coronavirus. And there's something that's happening here that, yeah, we've seen viruses come and go, but we've never seen anything quite like this before as a result. And it does seem like something different is happening here.
Well, what worries me is at more of a grassroots level. And, you're talking about the stock market, of course, but as I see this morning, California was declared a state of emergency. And I talked earlier about all the things going on in Cleveland, all the many things that are being shut down. What I'm really worried about is just think about all the restaurants and bars all
Right.
across the country that are employing people living paycheck to paycheck that are not going to be getting paid for who knows how long. People are, I'm sure right now I could go anywhere tonight. It's going to be dead. And these people are not bringing in income to feed their families.
Right.
And this, to me, so we talk about the stock market all day long. I'm not really concerned about the bankers and shit, but I am very concerned about my neighbors. And when people start getting desperate, who knows what can happen. So anyways, I think there's no way around getting a little bit gloomy as we talk about this kind of stuff, but my real point to that is to put focus on our neighbors, people that we love, and let's do what we can to help out the situation. Again, I got my retirement stuff in the stock market and was very pleased with how it did the last 3 years, and, horrified with what's happened extremely recently. We all are, but that's nothing compared to what's going on with a lot of our neighbors who cannot make an income right now when everything's being shut down. That's more of a concern. So I don't know. Let's just, bring it into our neighborhoods and see if we can help each other out a bit.
And, as soon as we are able to overcome this, the stock market's going to come back.
Sure.
And so these are things, hey, we're in the 401k or the stock market for the long run here. So these things are going to come back. If this could be, they do say, sell high, buy low. Well, we're looking at some things where maybe there's an opportunity to buy at this time if you have the resources in order to make that happen. And so keep an eye on the positive side. Try not to get sidetracked by the negative side, the dark side, I would say. And also stay prudent. Make sure you're doing the things that are being recommended. Wash your hands, as Barry keeps saying. I don't think I've washed my hands more in my life than in the last. Oh, wash your hands again. Did you touch that? Wash your hands.
Yeah, same here. It's the smart thing to do. And, like I said earlier, just going to recap on this real quick, that if you've been thinking about going out on your own and now you're getting squeezed out, don't get too full of fear. There's a lot of opportunity here. And as I said, when these companies downsize, they also need to then outsource a certain amount. Things just change. Things don't just shut off. Things just change. You just need to pivot a little bit.
I have a question for you, Barry. What do you do when you're feeling fear? What are the things that you do to overcome that?
Workout. Yeah, for sure. I definitely deal with my stress, anxiety, and all those things. And absolutely at the top of my game is working out. And I used to work out midday because it seemed like it would reset my brain. I would work on a project or two at the beginning, go to the gym, unwind, come back. But I have now once again for the last few years, probably most of my life. I've worked out in the mornings. I'm doing that again, first thing in the morning. And I can't wait to get there because my mind just starts going 100 miles an hour, and I need to go to the gym and just burn off all that kinetic energy so I can then calm down and focus a lot better. So to that end, if they close down my gym, I'm going to be really, really bummed because I already work out of a home office. I need to get out and go to the gym and so on. So if I got to work out at home, I'm going to lose my mind. But that's number one. Number two, I'd say getting out for battling stress and anxiety, getting out in nature, getting outside, getting away from the electronics.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I had a suggestion on the gym workout, though, is that, it's starting to get nice out there again,
Yes.
I think.
Yes, it's very
your
nice.
bicycle is out there. And,
Yes.
and I think you have gear where if it rains or whatever, you can still ride. And, there's really not a risk to getting coronavirus if you're, depending on where you ride, I guess.
Right.
But that's also a place where I know you and I both share this in common, where you get on your bicycle and you just start going, and your mind becomes free at the same time.
Yeah, no, that's a big one for me. As long as I'm not on the city streets where I'm worried about the texters and the crackheads and everything else. But yeah, one of my favorite rides is down MLK Boulevard, long, windy, beautiful road with a dedicated sidewalk that I don't have to worry about anything. And
It's beautiful along there.
It truly is. And then I get right up to the lakefront and go lakeside. And now they got this beautiful East 55th Street marina that the Metro Parks took over.
Oh,
I should stop talking about that because I don't want that to get too busy.
Do you ride your bike through Bracknell?
Sometimes.
I think that's a beautiful area through there.
It truly is, but some of those roads can get a little scary with fast traffic.
I gotcha.
Right.
You were saying that there were some television shows that you're interested in that kind of cheer you up as well.
Well, I really did want to bring that up, especially after all the talk that we've been having about this coronavirus and stress. We're always talking about stress and anxiety, and we often talk about, you and I, how difficult it is to find something that's not dark. Like I primarily at night look through Amazon Prime and Netflix, and everything is freaking dark. For that reason, I go to a lot of stand-up comedy. Okay, you can't go too wrong with that. But I got on a kick where I was looking for some comedy shows, and I ran across within the last week or two. One is called The Good Place. Ted Danson stars in that, and Catherine Bell. And it is I'm going to give you two. They're light comedies. They're, without the commercials, they're about 22 minutes per episode. So they go by really fast, covering a lot of ground, and are just kind of fun. The Good Place is about this girl that dies and goes to heaven. They call it The Good Place. And well, they mixed it up. She's really not supposed to be there. She's really not that good of a person. They got her name wrong, mixed up with someone else. And it's all the things that unfold through that. And it's funny in a very light way. I can see there's so many ways when Buddhist philosophy crosses over with a Christianity, and some of those, all of the, and near-death experiences. Like I like to research people that have near-death experiences and the commonalities of things that they've gone through. I see elements of all those things in this show, and it's just super light, goes by fast. So I recommend that. The other one that I just very recently discovered is Schitt's Creek. And it is hilarious. It's a fish out of water. It's the Beverly Hillbillies in reverse. Okay. It's a very wealthy family, Hollywood, that super wealthy, that lose everything in like a Bernie Madoff type of scenario. They lose everything except the town, the little tiny town that they bought that they never really say where it is. Called Schitt's, Schitz, whatever, Creek. And they bought it. The father bought it to give to his son as kind of a joke for his birthday. You know, that's how wealthy they were, this little tiny town. He bought a town for him. Well, that's what they were left with. And so they have to move into this flea bag motel into this town. And that's what it's all about. It is funny. And like I said, at 22 minutes per episode, these things really go by. And so there's minor cliffhangers in each, but you can get by with watching one or two episodes so quickly. And each is self-contained in its own little subject matter that it's just watch it as you go to bed and it's not going to mess with your mind. You know, it's going to leave you
I
at a
love
light.
that.
Yeah. So there you go.
Schitt's Creek. Those are great suggestions.
And The Good Place, both on Netflix.
I love to hear about that kind of stuff. I personally I'm right there with you, Barry. I am very sensitive to the dark type of shows that are on. It seems like almost all of them are. But what I have found and I didn't know this until recently, but I like romantic comedies. And the reason I do, I know it sounds crazy, but the reason I like these is because they always have a happy ending.
True.
And I always kind of feel choked up at the end. The other thing too is that usually it starts out with somebody has a dream that they feel like is impossible. And in the end, that dream comes true and they live happily ever after. Yeah. And I think those are things that can help us to give us a base of expectation of good. And I think if we can train our brains to have an expectation of good, then those things will actually happen. And I think romantic comedies lead to that. Barry, I wanted to transition into sort of a personal update. Last week, you talked about your doctor and you talked about some experiences that you were having. And I just wanted you to be able to give an update because I know that the people out there that are watching the show love you and they want to make sure that you're okay. So how you doing?
Doing way better, much, much better. So I had some very serious stomach issues for at least 2 weeks prior, and I was very bloated, something like an indigestion type of feeling. And I was also getting extremely lightheaded in general, but when I would be at the gym or something, there were times I thought I was going to pass out for sure. And I came very close. So that was kind of scary. Put those all together. It's kind of scary. Got the blood work done and found out everything was really good except my triglycerides were through the ceiling. And that has to do with the high blood pressure that I was also diagnosed with. My BP is really up there. So I'm on the BP medication and what is the one for the stomach? It's the
some kind of peptide.
Yeah, it's the common one. Most people know if I were to remember it. And nah.
No, that's over the counter.
Okay. So whatever that is, that stomach issue has largely gone away for the large part. And I've had none of the dizziness, feeling like I'm going to pass out kind of stuff in the last week. So that's really good. I've increased my workouts a great deal because along with hopefully the blood pressure medication will do its trick, I got to do my part. And amazingly, my cardio has not been affected. Like I would kind of think like I wouldn't be able to do as much cardio if I have this hypertension blood pressure problem. I don't know. But no, my workouts have been absolutely fine. My shoulder that I battle arthritis with, I also got x-rayed. I got that x-rayed 8 ways to Sunday. So I'm going to find out about that in 3 weeks too. But it's been doing much better. So my workouts have been really, really good. I appreciate you asking. In all regards, I seem like, all on the right track.
Boy, that's fantastic news and more rays of sunshine right there. I'm really glad to hear about your stomach as well, because man, when your stomach hurts, it's really hard to be in a good mood.
Well, it is, especially me. I've never had anything. We talked before. I've always had an iron stomach. Lisa knows that about me. Like I could eat nails. And nothing ever bothers me. So I wasn't even talking about it for a long time. Lisa's just like, well, you're really like, you putting on all kinds of weight or something? And, I finally in Florida, I had to come clean. I just wasn't feeling that good. I didn't know if the next day was going to be worse and I'd have to go to the emergency room. That's where I was at. So anyways, I was eating the candy kind of tasting Tums. That's what it is. The fruit Tums. Those are good.
Was that helping?
A little bit, I think.
Yeah.
I couldn't really put my finger on what worked and what didn't. Like if I didn't eat, sometimes that would be fine because I felt so bloated anyway. But then other times when I finally did eat, then I'd feel better. I couldn't really figure it out. I just don't know. But my doctors felt pretty confident that after a week of this medication, that Prilosec, that's it. Prilosec.
Oh, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. That if I felt like it was improving, then just continue taking the rest for the month, and it should just completely reset my iron stomach back to normal. That would be great. I think even still, I'll just continue to try to take a lot more moderation with my spicy food, alcohol intake, and everything else, and try to take it easy.
That sounds wise, and also that must be a big relief for you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The health. If you don't have your health, what do you have? I mean, you don't have anything.
Really, if you have your health, it's almost like you're rich because anything else is possible if you have your health. But if you don't have your health, nothing's possible for you.
Man, Merle, it's like talking about the working out thing. I'm not a gym rat or anything, but I need to work out for my mental state.
Yep.
And if that's taken away from me, even bike riding and stuff, that like we talked about there, that's some of the most important stuff in the world to me.
Yeah, I think it is. And I think people that don't know it, actually, it's important for them as well, because I've always heard that, when people have anxiety, the doctor you can get any kind of anti-anxiety kind of pill too, but they are always recommending physical activity.
Sure.
Even when you don't feel like it. That's actually something that brings you out of it. Oh, a number of other things too that are natural, but that's a big one, Barry. And I think you hit the nail on the head on that. Hey, one last thing I wanted to bring up, because I can see that we're coming to the end of our show here, is that we talked a lot about coronavirus today, and we are looking at putting together a special edition of our show where we bring on Paul J. Caracciolo. Gosh, Paul, I hope I pronounced your last name right. I know Paul well from Dimension Data. He's actually the founder and chief technology officer of Direct Hit, which Direct Hit is a small, it's a company that helps hospitals to get ready for technology and also efficiency. He actually reached out to me because he'd like to have a podcast about preparing for the corona pandemic, and he's got some good things to talk about there. So we're going to be putting that on very soon. Paul has been the chief technology officer at Stanford Children's Hospital and also the chief information security officer at Duke University. So it's going to be interesting to hear from him, and you'll see that soon.
Yeah, we'll do a special episode on that and still keep our regular scheduled program here for next Thursday. So that's going to wrap it up. And thanks a lot, Merle, for all your input and feedback on this crazy state that we're in right now. And hopefully we'll have a whole bunch more positive things to report next Thursday. Hey guys, please leave us a comment at our YouTube channel, which is Over 50 Starting Over. Or as I always say, just go to over50startingover.com. You got everything there. You could also leave a comment, but you can always see our latest podcast video and all of our links right there as well. Merle, talk to you next week, my friend.
Yeah, Barry, looking forward to it.
Okay.